Oh, Jonas. Yeah, and some other friend. Okay, it's time for start. My voice clear?
Yes.
Ken?
Yeah,
My voice okay?
gotcha.
Because I use a microphone so people can hear my voice.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning and good, very late good evening for Ken Westman at Seattle, USA. He's our chairman. So please, Ken, can you give us a comment? Welcome to session.
Yes. Hello. Hello across the world. I'm Ken. I'm at the Seattle Science Foundation. And today we're going to be giving you a demonstration of telecoils. Let me just punch that up.
Ken, before you start to introduce, can we have some time for introduce our friends over the world?
Certainly. Go right ahead.
Yeah. We have in this venue, we have many engineers because yesterday we have a very exciting program. And now we have some friends you probably know before, Antoka-san and Yoshiko-san. They all busy for other program station tests. So this is our venue, APEN venue size. Next to me is Albert O from Hong Kong. So that's our venue situation. Another connection is from Korea, Seoul National University, Bundang Hospital. Okay.
Hello.
Mr. Lee, say hello to everyone.
This is John Lee. Yes, nice to meet you, and very it's appreciate join invite to invitation this event. Thank you, Jiang. And
thank you for accept my invitation. I'm so happy you can join us. So okay, the other side is the National Taiwan University. Dr. Donald Lu is there. Would you please introduce who is with you?
Hi, I'm Ida. I'm from Cochlear, and here we have a recipient here who's with American's device, the Cochlear implant, and also his mother is here. Hi, everyone.
Okay, welcome. Yeah, so I think National Taiwan University's Su Jing is my colleague, and Ada is also our new friend who is helping many patients install the telecoil. So thank you very much for your joining us. So Ken, back to you. Please go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes just giving you a broad strokes overview. And what a telecoil is, it's a device for the hearing impaired, and it puts a broadcast signal directly into the person wearing the hearing aid's ear. So if, like in this conference venue, we have a telecoil loop set up, and if somebody in the room has a hearing aid, they can put it in the telecoil position, and what I'm saying can be pumped directly into their ear, so they don't have to listen to the overhead PA. They can hear it much clearer. Well, now there is a demo unit in the room where you are, T. Can you point out where that is so people know?
Okay. I will also change my camera so people know where it is located. Okay.
Under the table.
Room? Yes, actually, I know you was on the table. This is the telecoil, which is connected to this device. So with this coil, when this connect to the video conference device with output, and we can pick up some voice. Already showed them, and this is the camera, the earphone we have in our hand. Okay.
Yeah, it looks something like that. T has mounted underneath the desk. And the idea here is what's going through the headphones is the equivalent of what a person with a hearing aid would hear. So throughout our demonstration, please feel free to go up and try the headphones out so you can get an idea of what this experience is like for the hearing impaired. It's like T is trying it out now. Now, the unit he is using has a very small range. It's only a range of about 3 meters, so you have to be kind of close to that desk to hear this. And today, to talk about this, I have Dr. Doug Backous joining us. He is an say it again, say it for me, Doug, otoneurologist, and he's going to talk about Bahas and ear surgeries and what's involved in operating on the ear. I also have Spencer Norby, who is an audio engineer who specializes in installing these hearing loops here in the Northwest, and he'll talk about what's required to make the system work in a conference-type venue. And then also, we've already met Ida Chen. She's up in Taipei, and she's from Cochlear Asia, and she'll have a few minutes at the end to kind of talk about what you can do locally and where you need to get more information. So what I will do, looks like Doug and Spencer are changing seats. There you go.
In front of the camera, well.
There you go. And Doug will be the first speaker, and Doug, you can take it away.
Well, first of all, it's very nice to meet all of you, and it's very nice to be in many countries across the ocean at the same time. This is a vision that Ken and I and Spencer and others have had for quite some time, to see not only how we can send a message across the ocean, but to serve the people who we spend a lot of time taking care of every day. So telecoils are very, very important. I'd like to say a couple things. First of all, Spencer, as you'll see in just a moment, I'm going to pan to Spencer real quick, Ken. Spencer is way better looking than me, but I have a much thicker white coat on, so I guess that allows me to sit next to him. And this is Seattle, and you cannot give a lecture without Starbucks. So you're all welcome to come visit, and I'll buy your first cup of coffee. So Ken, can we go to the slides? So what I'd like to talk about, this is a little bit of a different talk, and it's really much more designed to be a little bit technical, to sort out some of the issues of the transmission, not really to talk about a lot of content. But this is actually our Mount Rainier, which is right outside the window, and it's very hot today. It's 100 degrees Fahrenheit in Seattle. But this is a cloud formation that looked a lot like a spaceship, so I thought that would be very pertinent with a bunch of engineers who are much more intelligent than I am to start a talk. So as an overview of this talk, this is really to present, as I would do to surgeons, to talk about a stepwise logical approach to solving issues around reconstructing the middle ear for hearing loss from chronic ear disease and infection. And we usually start with the external ear canal. We assess the eardrum, the middle ear lining, and also the ventilation tube. So the eustachian tube and the absorptive capability of the middle ear mechanism. Most people forget about the ear bones or ossicles and the supporting ligaments and how important they are with the outcome or the result measured in decibels for hearing restoration. The other component is what is the condition of the mastoid, which is the sinus behind the ear, and the middle ear. Starting in the external ear canal, you can see in this picture in the upper left, this is a coronal or frontal cut of the temporal bone, showing the inner ear canal. Here's the hearing and balance nerves. Cochlea is here. Here's the balance component right here. This is the ear canal, and you can see all of this gray represents soft tissue. It should all be black, representing air or normal ear canal, and that is edematous or swollen tissue that we need to remove. When you move down to this picture, you see these little areas that look like meaty tissue. That's granulation tissue or infection, where something more solid, as you see in this picture, represents bony overgrowth. This is what you call surfer's ear or osteoma formation. We can treat each of these with a surgical intervention, but keep in mind that the main component of the conductive mechanism in these conditions is in normal shape, because the tympanic membrane is taking care of the middle ear and keeping it away from the source of infection.
The slides hung up.
So Ken, maybe what you could do is show the video, and we'll reboot while we're doing it.
Okay, so what I have, this is a clip from Dr. Zahnert, who's a German doctor that Doug knows. And let me route my audio real quick.
So what you can tell from that video is positioning these prostheses, even with just a slight tilt, can actually change the sound transmission measured in decibels, but also in the quality of sound because of the frequencies that are transmitted. If we could return back to the slides, the next level to consider is the tympanic membrane or eardrum, and this is a perforation right here, or a hole in tympanic membrane in a relatively normal ear. And this is that same hole in an ear that's very infected. You can see all of this infectious tissue. So we definitely treat these very differently. We get control of the infection before we would do the operation. When we talk about how to reconstruct with cartilage, that's how we reconstruct the eardrum to make it thicker and more durable and to sit on top of one of those prostheses that you saw in Dr. Zonnert's video. And we take this from behind the ear or in front of the ear. And it turns out that the thickness of cartilage needs to be measured less than 0.7 millimeters, and we have cutters to ensure that. And that was actually good information that was provided to the world's literature by Dr. Zonnert. We look at middle ear factors. Is it a safe ear? Is it infected? Are there cysts or infectious tissues? You can see over here, this is a very nice picture of granulation tissue or infectious tissue under a microscope. We also look at the stability of the ear bone chain, which is the sound transmission and amplifier in the normal ear. When you look at the ear bones taken out of the skull, this is what they look like. This is the malleus, which attaches to the tympanic membrane or eardrum. This is the incus, which bridges the two ear bones. And this is the stapes, which is the piston that moves in and out of the inner ear transmitting sound. This is what they look like through a dissection, an anatomic dissection, looking down on top of those ossicles, and this is what it looks like under a microscope when you actually slice the temporal bone. We look at the factors between stapes surgery and middle ear surgery or chronic ear surgery. Stapes operations are for a conductive hearing loss from a disease called otosclerosis, where all of the rest of the ear is normal. When you look at chronic ear surgery, every level that we've discussed can be affected and has to be addressed individually. What is the ideal replacement ear bone or prosthesis? Well, it's the right size. It fixes to the ear bones adequately by passive tension, and it's balanced so it doesn't tip over when the patient resumes normal life activities. And you can see over here, this is actually a picture of a prosthesis coming from the stapes down below. This is hydroxyapatite and titanium. And it turns out that we don't need to put it under the malleus or the ear bone behind the eardrum, but near the malleus. And Dr. Zonnert so elegantly showed that in his sound demonstration you saw on the video. Also, the height and the thickness of the cartilage are very important. Middle ear mechanics, these are obvious to engineers. With surgeons, you got to speak a little more slowly. But the more aligned the prosthesis is, as you can see here, with the axis of the stapes, the better performance and sound transfer we can expect. Here's a couple of scenarios. This is looking in an ear. You can see right here is the cochlea, or inner ear organ of hearing. Here is the incus and the stapes. Here's the malleus with the eardrum removed. This joint is eroded, giving a conductive hearing loss, and we can repair that with any number of replacement prostheses. If the incus is missing, but the stapes is intact, you can see the stapes bone is here, the eardrum bone is fine. We can actually interpose prostheses as well. Combinations of titanium, ceramic, or plastipore, which is a plastic compound. We can also replace the entire stapes. So if the arch is gone, we can go to that footplate area and transmit sound. This is a very difficult situation to rectify, and this is when the opening to the inner ear is breached in an ear that is exposed to infection. So we have to place soft tissue over that, let that heal, and come back in 3 to 6 months and do the hearing restoration. One of the things that Ken asked me to talk about is the osteo-integrated devices. So Baha is one of those. Ponto is the competitor. And you can see this is a coronal view of the skull. And what we've done is we've made an incision in the skin, gone right through the skin, and we have placed an osteo-integrated titanium and titanium-coated fixture. We allow bone to grow in for 4 to 6 weeks, and then we snap a hearing device, a hearing prosthetic, which takes the sound, vibrates through the bone to the cochlea directly. If this cochlea has no hearing, it will go over the top of the skull and it will take the sound from the bad side to the good ear, so you'll hear from both sides through that one ear. So in conclusion, this is a systematic approach to middle ear, mastoid, and the whole auditory system with the goal of improving hearing outcome. Traditional dogma for ear surgeons is being challenged on a daily basis because of the new research opportunities that we've talked about. Very fitting that you saw the video from Thomas Zonart, because that video has had a major impact on how ear surgeries perform globally. We have a lab here at the Science Foundation where we have 40 Japanese surgeons per year come, or excuse me, every other year come and spend a week, and they'll all be using that model next year. The other thing that's very important that we've noted is preserving as much of the inner ear structures and ligaments as possible is beneficial. And this is a photograph from Alaska. And this was a fishing trip I went to, and this was sunrise over the river. And I can tell you that I caught salmon that were as big as the airplane that you see in the picture. So thank you very much. And once again, it's really awesome to be connecting with you. And don't go anywhere without your Starbucks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you very much.
Great to see you.
So can we, it's allowed us to have some question or audience from
Please
audience?
do.
Yeah. I'm interested in this kind, you mean, as you said, it's just a newly development. So how many percentage of patients they can benefit from this new technical?
You mean the Baha or the actual ear reconstruction?
Hearing extraction.
The reconstruction? With people with chronic otitis media or chronic ear disease, probably about 50% of them need some kind of middle ear reconstruction. So it's a very high number. I do approximately 400 to 450 operations a year, and about 300 are middle ear reconstructions. So a lot.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any question? You also familiar with this field? No? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you for taking such a long, it's quite late for you. Thank you, really appreciate for you joining us. And looking forward, I really hope in the future we can have a case conference and invite more doctors to join this session. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, Ken, would you please introduce the next speaker?
Yes. Next up, we have Spencer Norby. There you go. So next up, we have Spencer Norby. Spencer is an audio engineer who specializes in building out telecoil systems here in the U.S. He does venues such as conference halls and lecture spaces so that the hearing impaired can just come in and just put their hearing aid in the telecoil position. And he's going to talk about the mechanics of how this works and what engineering considerations have to go into it. So Spencer.
Hi. It's quite an honor to be able to speak with people from around the world and share this technology. I've been actually installing these hearing loops for a little over 9 years now, and I've done everything from counters up to very large auditoriums. And there's always things you have to take into consideration. I love the doctor's presentation because I have no bones in this ear side. I have a hearing aid over here that I just have cranked up really loud so that it rattles its way through my skull into my ear. It's not a wonderful solution, but it's worked for me to a degree so far. I want to talk about what hearing loops are, about how they're installed, and some things you have to think about before installing them. So I've got about a dozen slides here I'd like to share with you. First, why hearing loops as opposed to, there are other systems out there for getting sound from one place to a hard of hearing person, including infrared and FM radio, all of which require the user, the end user, to wear some kind of a headset device and all this other gear that will get in the way, and more than anything adds quite a bit of stigma to the person who is hard of hearing. And unfortunately what happens is that they stop participating because they don't want to stand out as being hard of hearing. They don't want to have people perceive them as being handicapped or disabled. And so the hearing loops allow them to just use the hearing aid they've got, they tap a button, and they hear now actually better than anybody in the room, and that's the big advantage. But I'm going to walk through this very quickly. There's financial reasons because you have to have few, you don't have to have so many receivers. In fact, if you're lucky, everybody will have a T-coil. That's the part that's inside the hearing aid. They'll have the T-coil or the cochlear implant that will use them, or the BAHA, the bone attached, all have those. So they won't need receivers at all. So if you have less receivers, there's less equipment to lose and get damaged. There's less maintenance. One of the things people forget about is those receivers have to be sterilized, because you can imagine all the things you can pick up through sticking things in or over your ears. So there's lower cost per user, because you'll have far more people using this equipment than would ever use FM or infrared. But for me, the biggest reason that I do this, and the reason I got into it, is because these systems all preserve dignity. The person is able to go in like anybody else, sit down like anybody else, and listen like anybody else without attracting attention to themselves as being a person who has to have special accommodations. And the big reason for doing it is because you as users, as engineers, people who do conferencing and present the equipment, because you care about that the people who come to your events, you want them to be able to participate. You want them to be able to learn. Right here in Washington, where Ken and I first got involved together with this, we had a lawyer in the Washington State Bar Association who was going to drop out of the Bar Association, that's the Lawyers Association, because he could not hear in their conference room anymore because his hearing was so bad. So the Bar Association voted to loop their entire conference room, which is probably at least 6 times the size of the room I'm in right now, possibly 8. And now he loves it. He can fully participate and hear everything that's going on in the room. Because it's going through the hearing aid is tuned really to perfectly address the issues of their particular hearing loss. It even works at your conference center. You probably have a front desk where people check in, register for whatever is happening. You can do a small loop like the one that we sent over there, or the one that's sitting here. Ooh, it does pick up in the microphone. We were just talking about that. If you get them too close to a dynamic microphone, they can feed back. But this is very, very, very close. You can put one of these under the counter in your reception area, and then they can check in very easily, and they'll be able to hear, because you know there's a lot of noise going on out there. And if you're hard of hearing, you can't sort out that sound to hear what you want to hear. For the user who is actually going to be listening through this system, there's way less fuss because they don't have to check out all this equipment and put on this headgear and everything else. They reach up, literally punch a button on their hearing aid, and they hear. And there is an international electrical code standard, a performance standard, that these have to work to a certain level. They have to be even. It can't be louder in one spot than another spot. The frequency response, your low frequencies, have to be no louder or no softer than the high frequencies. Metal in the floor or in the building can absorb. This works by magnetic fields. So if there's metal in the environment, you have to make your loop section smaller to overcome the loss, because that metal in the environment is really sucking the power, literally, out of your magnetic field for your hearing loop. So you make more small loops instead of a great big large loop. And so that's the International Electrical Code that has these standards of how they have to perform. The big thing, this is a small section of one that I do for presentations when I go out and educate people about them. But the T in the T-coil comes from the word telephone. And what happens, I'm going to switch mine back to microphone, is if you have a hearing aid and you take a telephone and put it up to your hearing aid, I'm sorry, are you hearing that over there? Your hearing aid would feed back and screech because you put that telephone right up against it. So now I've switched back over to my T-coil, and so now I could put a telephone right up against that and it won't feed back. So people with hearing loss and hearing aids weren't able to use the telephone. And that's how this all started. And then some brainy person figured, well, we can put a wire around a room with a special kind of amplifier, and we can make a great big coil for that T-coil to pick up. And that's how it all works. The other word for this, the scientific term, is called an induction loop, because it works just the same as any other form of electrical induction. The electricity forms a magnetic field. The magnetic field hits another coil, gets turned back into electricity, and because this magnetic field is oscillating the exact same way a speaker cone oscillates back and forth, this magnetic field carries the sound into the coil in the hearing aid, the T-coil. Now this is an example of some of the different sizes of T-coils. This is an American dime, and you can see there's 3 letters on here. Now our dimes, you're probably familiar with it, but they're about this big. So back to the presentation, this one T-coil is the size of 3 letters on the little tiny dime, and all of these different size T-coils are there to match the volume level that the microphone in that particular hearing aid has. The idea being you can push the button and you get the same sound performance back and forth between the microphone on the hearing aid or using the T-coil on the hearing aid. So moving on. So that's the T-coil, the telecoil in the hearing aid. Looks like I may have frozen again. Let's see.
I'd just like to point out, Spencer, that you don't have to have a built-in Baja like Doug was talking about. You can actually buy one off the shelf that'll have a telecoil position. So, just a comment there.
Can I raise a question? It seems this is a magnetic wave. Is it possible to build the coil inside an airplane? Suppose we want somebody to take an airplane. Is it possible? Will interfere all the navigation system?
My national engineer has talked about being in conversation with various airplane companies and airlines about the idea of putting hearing loops in airplanes. And the navigation systems in the airplanes aren't quite as sensitive as they try to tell us. And what they've talked about is little tiny hearing loops, like this big, and put it in the headrest. Now, the distance a hearing loop will travel is directly proportional to the size of the loop. So what all that means is if your hearing loop is only this big, its magnetic field only goes this far. So that's one of the safety factors in that. Now I'm going to have to advance this forward to get back to where I was. There's the next screen. The hearing aid, and this looks pretty much like the one I have. This is your standard, it's called a BTE, behind the ear in English. And you can see over here, there's the close-up of the T-coil mounted inside of the hearing aid. And that's all the bigger they are. And that's all it takes to pick up the magnetic field traveling through the air. Now, some people have expressed concern, well, what about people with pacemakers or other kinds of equipment? And I tell them nobody's ever died from a hearing loop. The power of the magnetic field, for those of you who are into magnetic engineering, is 400 milliamps per meter. I personally have no idea what that really means, except that that's actually less than the magnetic field of the Earth. It just happens to oscillate so that it can be picked up by a coil. Now here's where the problem really shows in your conference rooms, any auditorium, any facility. This is kind of the model that we have of acoustics and sound within a space. In the back here, or in the front of the room, we've got some speakers up here that are mounted in the ceiling, and you've got a person back here trying to listen. But what happens is that sound comes off those speakers and bounces off every single thing in that room. And what that means is every one of those little blue lines arrives at the ear of the person listening at a slightly different time. And because of the electronics in the hearing aid, they don't respond as quickly and nimbly as the natural ear. And so the ear can't sort that all out, and it all turns into kind of a fuzziness. And then you get people who add even more speakers, so you've got even more time delays, more time incidences of when the sound arrives. The real trick, though, is there are other people in the room, and they're not necessarily being quiet. So this is what the way this looks is the way the room sounds to the person who's trying to hear in your conference rooms. So just as that sound is masked by other sounds, as you can see, the visual is masked by the other things that are going on in the room. And the natural ear has ability to focus, and they call that differentiation. Just this big word for able to focus. But with a hearing aid, you can't do that. You can't focus your ears. And so it just all becomes noise. So now with a T-coil hearing aid and a hearing loop installed, what happens is instead of hearing everything through the microphone in the front of the hearing aid, you turn that microphone off, and so all of that background noise and everything disappears. But you've got that T-coil turned on, and so now that person talking speaks into a microphone that feeds into a special amplifier just for the hearing loop. Now the hearing loop sends that sound through the magnetic field into the T-coil, and from the T-coil through the hearing aid and into the ear. So we've eliminated all of the other background noises, everything else that's going to interfere with their ability to hear, their ability to participate, and it's going to also eliminate their fear of not quite hearing something right when they go to answer a question and they're answering the question that isn't the one that was asked. That's a hard of hearing person's biggest fear, is to say something that doesn't really reflect what was being asked or said before. Now here's some basic loop patterns. If you're thinking about someday about putting hearing loops into a conference facility, this is called a perimeter loop, as a perimeter of a circle, except it's a square. It goes around the outside of the room. You can do this easily in most wood buildings because there's no metal to absorb the magnetic field. If you've got some metal, then you break it down into 2 smaller loops. More metal, you go into 3, you just make smaller loops and more of them. Except every place where those wires cross in the middle, there'll be a dead zone. So if you've got a room with fixed seats that are bolted to the floor, they never move, you can do this kind of a loop because you put those crossed wires right under their knees where they'd be sitting, right in front of the edge of the chair, and you could do this then with one set of loops. If you've got a lot of metal, then you get into funny stuff. This is called a low loss array. This is more like what you're going to see. This is called a phased array. There's 2 systems overlapping, but I've got another slide that's going to show that better. This is called a phased array. You can cut back to me. If you've got one waveform coming off of an amplifier, this is your waveform. You can't just put another waveform directly on top of it or 180 degrees opposed to it because the 2 could start up, my brain just died. They could start fighting each other. They can get into distortion. That's the word I wanted. But what you do instead is you offset those waveforms by what they call 90 degrees, a quarter of a wave. And now those 2 waveforms will work in concert together, and they won't distort and they won't cancel each other out. And that's what this system does. It uses two separate loop systems with the waves offset 90 degrees, and they can work together, and you don't have any dead spots. And you can cover a very large space with no dead spots, and it's a smooth system, same volume all over. So going on, this is the drawing of the beginning of one of the two arrays. So you go out and you circle back. Now at these points, let's see if I can get this, at these crossings, the electricity in these wire and these spaces are both going in the same direction. So like this one's going down, this one it's going up. The electricity in both wires basically has to have the same polarity. Now over the top, what happens is where these wires cross, you've got those dead zones. That has to do with the way the magnetic field rotates around the wire and the way that magnetic field, if this is the T-coil, the magnetic field rotates around. If it cuts straight across that T-coil, it doesn't generate electricity. But if it's off to the side and that magnetic field comes through the coil at an angle, it pulls the electrons through and starts an electricity flow. So there's some more physics. So going back, then over the top of that system, we're going to lay another system. So we've got two arrays. We've rotated the phase on the magnetic fields, so it's called a phased array. Now the red system has its own dead zones, but the yellow system covers the dead zones for the red covers the dead zones for the yellow, and you have a very even performance over the entire room. Now most of these modern buildings, like this one for example, you've got a steel sheet down there, then you've got about this much concrete poured on top of a steel plate. So there's a lot of metal under there absorbing power. So you go to that phased array I just drew, and you do them in sections. You have to test the floor for how big a loop you can make, because you want to go as big as you can, just to save money on wire and everything. Generally, concrete over steel, you get up to 8 feet, just under 2 or just over 2 meters. If you've got a concrete floor with just metal rebar bracing in it, you can get up to 16, sometimes 21 feet. I'm not fast on my metrics, I'm sorry. Who's fast on the metrics?
3 feet per meter.
Yes. If you've got a wood frame building, you can get up to as much as 20 meters across on a wood frame. So let's go back to the slides. So that's the basics of the phased arrays, what hearing loops do, and how they work. Do you have any questions?
Well, thank you very much, Spence. And I think you explained very well. And although something we are not really familiar with, actually this is our first time encounter this loop. So we do quite interesting. And so do you think what we can, as you said, some people really work hard to promote, to build this kind of hearing loop in many public places. So as us engineering, what should we do? For instance, we use the video conference very often, and in this kind of medical meeting. You mean, should we try or encourage people to do that? That's my first question.
Thank you. You have several outlets that you can go through. In the United States, there's an organization called the Hearing Loss Association of America. And they are a very strong group, very strong-willed, and they have conferences every year, conventions, and they are really promoting hearing loops from within their organization. I do not know if in your various countries you have organizations for people who are hard of hearing. That might be the first step, is for organizations of those kinds to start. Audiologists can be wonderful proponents, people who support these kinds of programs for their clients. One of the things that they've found with hearing loops and T-coils is that people who have T-coils in their hearing aids and have access to hearing loops in their neighborhoods, in their theaters, for movies, even in their own homes for their television, they're more happy with their hearing aids than they are without. Because hearing aids are very, very frustrating devices, because everybody thinks they're going to get a hearing aid and they're going to hear just like they did when they were 14. And that doesn't happen. But with hearing aids, with hearing loops and T-coils, people are more happy with their hearing aids. And that's a good point for audiologists to use. Starting a movement, and it would be a movement in your various countries, to support these kinds of technologies would be an incredible thing. It adds to people's quality of life. They have found that this is kind of the beginnings of research on this area, but in areas of Alzheimer's, just having the stimulation of hearing makes a big difference in mental activity and how young the brain can stay. That as people lose their hearing, there's beginning research that there's a relationship with people who are losing their hearing and how fast they lose other cognitive abilities. I said, this is just real starting, so you can't quote me too loudly on that. But there are people looking into those connections.
And this might be a good moment to just give Ida a second to talk, because Ida is from Cochlear Asia, and T's question was about how to promote this within Asia. So Ida, do you have any comments about expanding this and how people in Asia can access this technology where you are?
Well, actually, yes, I think now in Taiwan, we're using like T-coil thing. So like hearing aids or cochlear implants, speech processor, and as well as SPAHA, we do have the inbuilt T-coil. But however, we cannot use it a lot in Taiwan. Some of telephones, you need to try it before you purchase it. So I think that's a really good point that we can gather some like deaf association to put more effort on this. You know, actually in Taiwan, we do provide like free FM systems instead of T-coil, because I know that T-coil is more cost effective and can be produced in, you know, like movie theater or like in like stations or airport. So I think that's a really good point that we can push this in the country and even in Asia. Because I know that in Asia, we have some countries using it, but I'm not quite sure about Japan and Korea. But like in other like Asia, Southeast Asia, we don't have much T-coil facilities actually. Yeah, I think that's a really good point that we can push this out. Yep.
And normal people or people like a person like me, I'm getting old and my hearing getting lost. Can we also benefit from this technology?
I'm sorry, I was distracted when our lights went off here.
T was asking if it was available for the general public and older people who could use one.
Well, first, I think from hearing aid, just the hearing aid portion, with the huge hearing loss that I have in my ear, I actually bought my hearing aid on eBay for $112. It does not have the built-in computer system, so basically a modern hearing aid is a computer that goes in your ear because it does massive audio processing. But with my loss is just volume, loudness. So for me, this works. For a lot of people, this would not. But for example, with the cochlear implants, people invest quite a bit in receiving those. And one thing I would encourage with that kind of community in particular, I think anybody who is getting a hearing aid, a great way to start with this would be if, along with the hearing aid, was included something, oh, it's just off camera. One of these little boxes. This box is somewhere in the neighborhood of $200. It depends on what other things you get with it.
Actually, I just surfed this one up on eBay. It's $218 right there.
Yes. Yeah, that's a different company. Those are different quality.
Yeah, definitely a quality thing. You have to know what you're getting into.
Yeah, there's a lot of difference in quality, and like with all technologies. But one this size will loop somebody's television room. And the neighbors would really appreciate it if the person with the hearing aid didn't have to turn their television up so loud, because even with a hearing aid, there's something about sound coming off of a speaker that just doesn't sound right. It's still hard to understand. But this could be hooked, this small box would be hooked up to a television, and it would vastly improve their quality of life just with their TV. I had a family fly me up from Seattle to Ketchikan, Alaska, to put a hearing loop in their mom's house. And I did her TV room first. And the first thing they commented was that Mom went in there and watched TV today, and she stayed awake. Because before, it was so exhausting to try to understand the words on the TV that she would fall asleep. But now she's able to watch TV, and that one-to-one, that in-home use is a really good place to start with this. And so if you bring audiologists and hearing aid dispensers and those people on board to offer these and actually promote those in their offices, that would be a great beginning. And from there to reach out to public venues like auditoriums. Here in, just about 2 weeks ago, I put one into a library. And last week I put 3 large systems into a big public lecture hall and concert hall facility. So all kinds of places can benefit from these, but yes, getting the whole thing started is very difficult. I've installed these for 9 years, but I've only made a living at it for the last 2. And that's pretty much a measure of what it's like. Hearing loops have been in place in Europe for a number of years, but a lot of them don't work because they didn't have performance standards for them yet. In the United States, they're really starting to pick up now. I'm just starting to get competitors in this region of the country. Before, I was pretty much everything there was, I was the installer. So it does take a lot of work and a lot of time to get this going. It's a big mountain to move, to get people so where they're showing interest in truly helping people who are hard of hearing. But for performance venues, they need to realize that those people who are hard of hearing also have money, and they would love to spend it being able to go to performances and to participate. So there is a dollar value there that will be returned. That's a big answer to a short question.
Yeah, so Spencer, thank you very much for your talk. Really, we learned a lot from you. And to me, I feel, I know I have so many friends around me, when they're getting hearing loss. And you will also know that these days, people putting down the iPod, too many, they listen to their hearing loss greatly. And I presume Ada will be happy in the future. She will have more customers than now, because indeed the hearing loss is a big, I would say that it will be a big issue in the future. Many people need these kind of aids. So I think if we prepare the environment to help people, that would be great. I believe I probably myself, when I'm getting old, I will benefit from this technique. So I would like to certainly to help to promote this idea. And of course, as you said, it's still, even in the United States, still they have a good organization to promote this. And I do hope so. We can, in some other Asian country, we can do this. And it's really great help for you to tell us this knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So give us him the call. Okay.
And then
So,
I would like to just give Ida a moment, just give Ida a moment to introduce herself and talk about what her connection is with Cochlear and what she can do to help facilitate this in Asia. So Ida, if you'd like to take a moment and just kind of talk about what you can do in Asia to help these people.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
please.
Hi, I'm Ida. So I'm working in Cochlear as a company, and I'm an audiologist as well. So actually, so we are treating like hearing loss people for like implantable hearing solutions, so like cochlear implants and Baha and thing. And the main goal is we want to help this impaired people can go back to the normal life and going back to the mainstream. So that's what I'm doing. And now I'm looking after Asia growth market. So I'm looking after Taiwan, Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka for the clinical service. So mainly I'm based in Taiwan. So actually I'm quite interested in promoting this Telecoil thing around Taiwan or even in Asia, because I know this is cost active, and also you can just improve the quality of life for those people. So I'm looking forward to have more information from you guys, and then maybe we can have a cooperate in the future. Thank you.
Ida. Oh, here we have Dr. Yong-Song Lee from Korea. You have some question, please.
Okay,
Dr. Lee.
so my major is public health policy. So I'd like to pick question to the speaker. So in this case, we can use the neural deafness, one ear neural deafness. So is this device for use that case? Neural deafness. So.
Yeah. Ida, can you got the question?
Yeah.
Okay, you may also-
I just wondering, do you mean is a single side deafness patient?
Yeah, single-sided deafness in defect of a neuron. So cochlear has some damage. In that case, we can use that?
Yeah, Ida, what you?
Well, I think it's for single-side deafness. We do have some devices can help them, something like Baha, and also some countries using cochlear implant for this kind of indication. So if they are using like Baha or cochlear implant, or even there is another hearing aids called cross hearing aids. So that if they are also imbued with Telecoil, and yes, they can use this kind of device.
Any question? Thank you very much. Thank you for your question. So, Cam, so it's. I think we just had a demonstration. So besides that, do you have anything you would like to demo? Yeah, please go ahead.
Punch up everybody's contact information. Spencer does have hearingloop.org and hearingloopnorthwest.com if anybody has questions about that. And Ida's contact information is on the screen there as well if anybody would like to follow up with her, and Doug Backous, etc. But other than that, I think it was a good demonstration. I think we're good to go here, Chi.
Thank you very much. I think we had a wonderful time, and we learned a lot from you. And especially thank you for you stay such a late for joining us. I really appreciate for your support this activity, and we are really looking forward have a further video conference like this, and hope we can exchange more experience with you and doctors, something like that. Oh, by the way, oh, sorry, I forgot. Nothing. And so we like to actually connect our participants, say farewell to Dr. Jiong Lee. Anything you would like to say? Any comment about today's program?
Thank you for wonderful presentation. I learned very many another field in medical. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I hope to I hope to join other field with my telemedicine field, because we every time is sending big high quality video imagery, not also like hearing aid devices, audio devices. If add these two devices, it is more effective to telemedicine or teleconsultation. Thank
Okay,
you.
indeed. Thank you very much.
Join together with you. Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you. Thank you. Thank you, John Lee. So any comment from Albert?
Oh, because I'm a new guy on this technology. I thank you very much for your presentation and let me know a lot on this kind of device. And thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. And Spencer, thank you. Any comment or from USA?
I think we're good.
You're good. Thank you. So it's time to say goodbye, and really appreciate all the participants for this very useful meeting. And really we looking forward to see each other in the near future, and hope you have a good sleep tonight. For you, you are really late for you. And so we say goodbye to each one of you. Say good night for USA, and say goodbye to our Asian friend. And Ida, thank you very much for you joining us. Okay, bye bye.
Yes, thank you all.
Bye.
陈小姐，谢谢你的参加。那你就等一下你就先离开没有关系。好，谢谢你。好，那我们回台北我再跟你联络，有机会我们再联络。谢谢。